All right, so kids, I'm not going to invite you forward, but do you remember last week when we talked about the story of Jacob? When we walked through that whole story? Well, I had fun doing that. And so I actually asked Jacob if he could come this morning. I asked him if he could come and kind of share a little bit more in depth of everything that he's been through and why he has been changed and who he is. And so I'm going to pray for him, and then I'm going to introduce you to him. So would you pray with me? Dear Lord, I ask that you would be with Len as he shares with us, as he comes and he shares the story that you have shared with us, the story that you have passed down through so many generations. And Lord, I pray that you would be with him as he shares it, but Lord, that it would speak into our hearts as well. We praise you in your precious and holy name. Amen. So I would like to introduce to you Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham.
I am Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham. But I'm not living in the land that was promised to us by the Almighty. Like my father and my grandfather before me, I fled the land of promise because I was fleeing from a famine. While my father and grandfather went to Gerar, I went to Egypt. But it's not as bad as you think, for I was there surrounded by my whole family. Hey, you're not going to believe this, but my favorite son, Joseph, the son of my favorite wife, Rachel, is second in command in all of Egypt. No one but the Pharaoh has more power than my son Joseph. But I'm an old man now. The years of my earthly pilgrimage are 145. How is it that I can't remember what I did yesterday? But what I did as a child and as a young man, I remember with amazing clarity. And the older I get, the more I remember. I was raised in a very small family. Just my father, Isaac, my mother, Rebecca, and my older brother, I say older, he was minutes older than me, for we were twins. And so often the story was told, in fact, that it felt almost as though I can remember the facts of my birth, as though I could still see them myself. When we were born, Esau was the firstborn. But I was told that it looked as though I was trying to grab Esau by the heel so that I could pull him back into the womb so that I could be born first. That became my name. The heel grabber, the deceiver, the usurper, Jacob. Now, it didn't take long before I lived up to maybe I should say lived down to my name. But before I tell you that story, I need to tell you something about my brother Esau. When he was born, he was covered with red hair, and he was given the name Esau, that means red. And he was a burly man, a bear. And he loved the outdoors, and he was a hairy man. He became our father's favorite. Oh, what pain that caused me. Every son wants to be loved by his father. And I kept feeling as though I was rejected, that I was not Esau. But my mother, in seeing this, took me under her protection. And while Esau spent all his time out in the outdoors, I stayed at the house. There, I stayed in the kitchen, and my mother's love was poured over me. One day, Esau came home. I don't know where he'd been, but he said he was famished, and I had been preparing this stew of lentils. And he came into the house, and he smelled it. Oh, he said, I'm starving to death. Give me a bowl of that stew. And I looked at him, and I said, brother, I will not give you the stew, but I will sell it to you. Well, Esau said, what have I to trade? I have no money. I have nothing to give you. But again, I smiled and said, you have no money. I will take your birthright. Now, I have to tell you what a birthright is. You see, there were laws governing how a man's estate could be divided when he died. And the firstborn with the birthright got a double portion of anything left by our father. And since there were just 2 sons, the estate would be divided into 3 pieces. Esau would receive 2, and I would receive 1. And Esau said, what good is a birthright if I starve to death? And so he took that mess of pottage. He detested his birthright, for he did not hold it dear. Nothing really changed a great deal because our father was still alive. But then when father became old and blind and could no longer see, he called Esau to him and said, I want you to take your bow and your quiver of arrows, and I want you to go and hunt. And I want you to bring back a deer. And then I want you to prepare that venison in the way you know that I love it. Then I will speak my blessing over you. My mother overheard the conversation, and she called me to her and said, you will receive Esau's blessing. Well, how can I receive Esau's blessing? Listen, she said, you go out into the flocks and you bring back 2 kids, 2 young goats, and I will prepare those goats the way your father likes them. And then you will take the food to your father, and he will speak his blessing over you. Well, that couldn't work. We are so different. He is hairy, and he's loud, and he's big. Father will see that I am trying to deceive him, and he will speak a curse, not a blessing on me. But mother said, the curse will fall on me if there is any curse. Now go, do what I've told you. Plus, we will take goat skin and wrap it around your neck and on your arms. And if your father should embrace you, he will feel Esau. And so I went, and I got the 2 young goats, and my mother prepared the food for my father. And I came into his room, and I said, Father, it's me. Who? Me, your firstborn, Esau. Esau? Oh, no, you couldn't be Esau. How could you possibly have killed a deer in such a short amount of time? The Almighty has helped me. I had recruited Yahweh, the Almighty, to be part of my scheme to deceive my father. My father had a quizzical look on his face and said, Come to me, my son, that I might embrace and give you my kiss. And so he did. And he rubbed his hand on my neck and felt the hair. And on my arms, and he felt the hair. I had also put on a robe that had been worn by Esau, and the smell of the outdoors was all over me. And so our father sniffed, and he mumbled to himself, "He feels like Esau. He smells like Esau. But he sounds like Jacob. He must be Esau." And so I fed my father, and then I knelt before him, and he put his hands upon my head and spoke these words of blessing over me. He blessed me with all the riches of the earth. He blessed me and saying that all the nations would serve me, that my family would bow down to me. And I left with the blessing that my father had intended for my brother. Shortly after that, Esau returned, and he cooked the meal, and he brought it to our father. "Father, it's me, it's Esau. I brought you the meal you wanted." "Esau? No. You were just here. You just fed me the venison that I asked for, and I spoke my blessing over you." And Esau's face turned red with anger. And at that moment, he knew exactly what had happened. He knew it was me, that I had deceived our father. And he said, "But Father, you must have a blessing for me as well." And he spoke words over me that said I would be driven from my people, that I would serve my brother. No blessing at all. And when I saw him later, Esau looked at me and said, "The days of mourning for my father's death will soon be upon us. And when he dies, it will only be a few days before you join him in the family tomb." My mother said, "You must leave here. I will talk to your father, and I will tell him that I do not want you to marry a Canaanite woman, and that you must go back to the land of my fathers. And there, my brother Laban will find a bride for you." And so I went to see my father, and he agreed with my mother, and he sent me. And I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and the staff in my hand, and I walked to the little city of Luz. And one night as I slept, I put my head upon a stone pillow, and there I had a dream. And the dream was this stairway all the way up to heaven, and angels ascending and descending. And at the top was Yahweh himself, the Almighty. And he said, "I am the God of your father Isaac. I am the God of Abraham. And all the land that you are on and have traveled will be your land. And your descendants will be so many that they can't be counted." And when I woke up in the morning, I exclaimed, "Surely the presence of the Lord was in this place, and I did not know it." And then I did something very strange. I thought that I could bargain with God. I could somehow manipulate him. And so I said to him, "If you take care of me, if you provide for me and protect me, you will be my God. And I will give you 1/10 of everything that I have." How do you think anyone could believe that they could bargain with God? And so I left for the land of Haran, and there to the home of my uncle Laban. But before I got there, I came to a place where the shepherds brought their flocks to be watered in the evening. It was the middle of the day, and there was this girl. She was beautiful. She would make the flowers envious of her beauty. And she sat with her flock at the well, but was not watering them. And I came to her and I said, "Why aren't you watering your flock?" "Well, I have to wait till the men come so they can remove the stone from the mouth of the well." And I looked at her again, and I thought, there is nothing I would not do for that woman. And so, with amazing strength, I pulled the rock off the mouth of the well, and she was able to water her flocks. I found out that her name was Rachel. Her father was Laban, brother of my mother. And so I went to their home, and I said to Laban, "I am the son of your sister, Rebekah, and I want to marry your daughter, Rachel." Laban looked at me, and this look, this sly look came across his face, and he said, "You have nothing to give me as a bride price, but here's what I can do. You work for me for 7 years, and you can marry my daughter." So I agreed. And 7 years went by, almost like 7 days, because I was so in love with Rachel. The 7 years were completed, and the wedding took place. And I saw my bride come to me. I couldn't see her face, she was veiled, but in my mind's eye, I could see the beauty of Rachel radiating from under her veil. The wedding took place, and we were escorted to the bridal tent. And there, I spent the night with my wife. In the morning, I woke up, and under the sun, I saw it was not Rachel who was there. It was her sister Leah. While Rachel was a beautiful woman, Leah, to be kind, was very plain. And I was outraged. And I went to Laban, and I said, "Laban, what have you done to me? I told you I wanted to marry Rachel, and you've pawned off your older daughter on me." And he smiled and said, "You don't understand, do you? It's the custom. The older daughter must always marry before the younger. But here's what I will do for you. For another 7 years of labor, I will give you my younger daughter as well." And something had happened there. Jacob, the deceiver, Jacob, the usurper, had become Jacob, the deceived. And so after 7 more years, I was able to marry Rachel right away, but then I put in 7 more years. But it's strange. Leah was able to have sons. Rachel was barren. Son after son came to me through Leah. And Rachel was outraged. "How can you not give me sons?" And I said, "Am I God that I can act in his place? I can't do anything that God does not allow. Take my maidservant, Bilhah, have sons with her, and they will be my sons." So I did. Then Leah no longer had children, and she said, "Take my maidservant Zilpah and have sons with her." What a strange family we were. Then Yahweh, blessed be his name, opened the womb of my favorite wife, of Rachel, and gave me a son. We named him Joseph, added by God. for he was God's blessing to us. I did not learn from my father that choosing a favorite was not good. And I chose Joseph as my favorite because he was the son of my favorite wife. And he was my favorite. Plus, I put on him a coat of many colors. And everyone who saw him knew that Joseph was my favorite. I had not learned. It's strange. At the end, I had 12 sons. But Laban had cheated me over and over and over again. 10 times he changed my wages. Sometimes he said, the young of the flock that are streaked will be yours. And Yahweh would bless the flocks, and they would, almost all of them, come out streaked, then spotted, then black. And every time Yahweh looked after me. But I knew that Laban would one day completely take everything from me, and I had to leave. And I told him I had to leave. I could no longer trust him. And I gathered up my flocks and my wives and my 12 sons, and we returned to the land of promise. But there was a problem. That problem had a name. That name was Esau. He had promised, he had threatened that he would kill me. And so I didn't know what would happen when I went back home. And so we traveled to the river Jabbok. And there one night, a man came. And he wrestled with me all night long. And I prevailed over him. And when the morning light came, he said, "Release me." And I said, "I will not release you until you bless me." And so he did. He blessed me. He repeated the promise that Yahweh had given to my father and to my grandfather. And he said, "What is your name?" "Jacob," I said. "No, you are no longer Jacob. You are Israel, the one who contends with God and with man and prevails." And so I became Israel. 145 years old. And I look back on my life and I ask the question, how is it that Jacob the deceiver, Jacob the usurper, the heel grabber, could become Israel, the one who contends with God and prevails? It wasn't because I was a good and moral man, because I was not that. It was the grace of God, and only the grace of God, that allowed me to be used by God. So it is with you. There is nothing that you have, there is nothing that you are able to do that has not been granted by the grace of God. It's also a reminder to us that we need God, not just for the big things. Every day, I need God to guide me and to help me. And every day, you need God. Every day, The only way you make it through from one day to the next is by the grace of God. And as you leave this place, may you be challenged by Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham, to rely and trust in the grace of God. And may his peace be yours